Hi there, I'm David Fortney from FortneyScott.
And I'm Judy Kramer, also from FortneyScott.
Hi. So, we want to spend a couple minutes with you talking about the new overtime regulations that the Labor Department has just issued, actually today.
Just this morning.
This morning, yeah.
Exactly. They kind of announced them last night, very late at night on the 17th, and today on May 18th. They're actually out there for everybody to see.
Right. And there's a lot to see, isn't there, Judy? A lot of, what, 500 plus pages?
508 pages, but it was counting.
Right.
Right. Most of that, of course, is preamble, meaning their explanation, the Labor Department's explanation as to all of the comments that were filed regarding the proposed regulations, the Department of Labor's analysis of the various comments, and why they chose the final regulations as they chose to write them.
So, we're going to have a lunch and learn next week, and we hope everyone can join us on that. That's going to be on Wednesday, May 25 at 12 noon. But let's talk a little bit about some of the highlights as we're sort of slogging through the 500 plus pages. There's a lot there. I guess the new salary levels, the main takeaway.
That is indeed the main takeaway, and that's been the subject of all the news stories that have come out yesterday and today. And the Labor Department has raised the threshold for exempt salaried employees from the current $23,660 to roughly double that amount, to be precise, $47,476 a year. So anyone making below that new level of 47,000 plus, let's call it 47.5, will automatically now be non-exempt, i.e. entitled to overtime.
No matter what their duties are.
No matter what their duties are, with no change in their duties from their current status.
And that's a big change. And I think DOL is trying to soft soap that a little bit, saying, well, it wasn't as bad as it could have been. We were actually going to make it higher. What, 52,000?
Roughly 51, 52,000.
52. I don't really accept that as a rationale. I mean, you know, they're still hitting the business community pretty hard with this.
Indeed.
And I think it is a big deal. Now, maybe making lemonade, but we've got till December 1 for compliance. That helps.
That's correct.
We do have some time to kind of get our arms around it. What do you think are some of the other kind of key things as we're looking through these?
Well, some of the key provisions are that for the first time now, an employer can meet that salary threshold, albeit a higher salary threshold, in part by the payment of non-discretionary bonuses, commissions, other incentive payments, up to 10% of the new salary threshold. So again, in round figures, roughly $4,800 of that new threshold can be met by incentive payments, as long as they're paid on a quarterly basis.
Okay. So that helps.
That does help, and there's a provision for catching up each quarter. When you determine that salary level hasn't been met, you can do a catch-up payment.
Right. And I know they changed the metric for the highly compensated executive. They've raised that up a little bit, but otherwise that remains the same.
Correct.
130, 134?
About 134, it had been 100,000
right.
before.
So we have that change. And COLAs, there was a big concern because historically wage hour requirements have not changed automatically. The President introduced that for federal contractors with their new minimum wage, federal minimum wage for contractors, but I gather we have that in these now also.
That's correct, and the final regulation softens that provision as well from an employer's point of view. In the proposed regulation, that COLA would have gone into effect on an annual basis, so that every year employers would have to look at the newly adjusted salary threshold and make adjustments on an annual basis to their employees' classification. Now it's going to be a 3-year adjustment period.
Right.
So assuming there is a cost of living increase in that 3-year period, at least that will give employers some time to work with the new threshold.
Well, and as we have already, phone's been ringing off the hook, as we start dealing with folks as they're rolling through these, obviously the implementation, because generally there are a few carve-outs, but most employers are going to have to deal with these by December 1, and I think developing an effective implementation plan is really critical, and I know that's what we want to focus on next week when we talk.
Exactly. I think the contours of this new regulation are not that complex. They're burdensome, they're difficult for employers, but fairly easy to understand. So we'll talk about that, of course, and put these changes in context. But like you just said, David, what we would like to focus on are really the practical pointers for employers as to the decisions they're going to have to make.
I mean, there's a lot of ways of meeting these new requirements in terms of how you structure your workforce, how you structure your work, how you compensate people. Flexible work week may be an option. and a lot of others, so making sure we understand all that, and then the actual implementation.
The key elements of implementing these new regulations is going to be developing an employee communications strategy.
Right.
And we're going to talk about that in our Lunch and Learn, how employees feel about being reclassified from exempt to non-exempt, if that's what's going to happen to some of your workforce, is a huge issue, and I think it's one that the Labor Department kind of gave short shrift to in these regulations.
I think that's right. It is critical, and that's one of really 5 critical areas that we want to talk about in the Lunch and Learn next week. So Wednesday, May 25, 12 o'clock noon. Register on our website, www.FortneyScott.com.